Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Michigan Insider, michigan.247sports.com. Alejandro Zuniga here with Sam Webb. We are at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, a very familiar location for us, for Michigan fans, for Michigan players, and their staff. We are here for Big Ten Media Days, the last day, which just concluded here on Thursday. Got a chance to talk to Sharon Moore, Makari Page, Max Bredesen, Donovan Edwards, and others from across the Big Ten landscape. With the lengthiest conversation with Sharon Moore, which just wrapped up. Sam, I'm going to leave it open-ended for you. What were your biggest takeaways from the day?
That they are not trying to reinvent the wheel. I think there's so much when you are coming back from a championship team and a lot of the championship components have left, and people ask, what are you going to do different? And I think the question is, what are you going to try to do the same? I don't think they're going to try to come in and, hey, I'm going to try to put my own stamp on it. I think you can try to be yourself and still try to do things the same way that things are being done. And I think that's what Sharon Moore is, and the players are really talking about, because so much of what they did, their imprint was on. So much of what they were as an offense, so much of what they were culture-wise, these players and Sharon as a coach had a hand in building. And so I think that's why it's been so easy to carry it over. And yet it will be a challenge to bring along some of these guys who, they were here for the ride, but they are going to be expected to play a larger role. I asked Max Bredesen that question. I see Max walking by now. He says, you got some guys on this team who all they've ever done is be here in Indianapolis in the Big Ten championship game. They think that's how it's supposed to be. So how do you instill in those guys the knowledge that there's a process, like there's a sacrifice that goes along with it? It doesn't just happen. And he said, we definitely have to deliver that message. And they've done some things he didn't get into telling me how the sausage was made, but they've definitely done some things as players to instill that message, like, look, guys, there is a grind that goes along with all of this progress that we've made over these years.
Yeah, I think for me, the confidence really stood out, and the confidence started with Sharon Moore with his opening statement. He didn't shy away from the fact that Michigan, despite losing its entire defensive coaching staff, despite losing Jim Harbaugh and so many of the contributors from last year, they're approaching this season like they want to win a fourth straight Big Ten championship. They want to make a fourth straight college football playoff. They want to compete for a national championship again. Sharon was up there sounding like Jim Harbaugh, saying they're going to attack this year with a contagious enthusiasm unknown to mankind. Pulled that one out, talking about the team. And I think we saw that from players like Donovan Edwards. We've talked to him a lot this offseason. He has taken on such a bigger role. Obviously, he's going to take a bigger role as a player, but he is a lot more mature of a person than the guy we knew at West Bloomfield and the guy we knew even a couple of years ago when he was talking about going first round in the NFL draft. Now he's deflecting and talking about his teammates, his offensive line, and how he can be a better performer for the whole team.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's a great piggyback off of what I said about not doing anything different, about carrying over what they just did. And that, to me, was the message that Donovan gave. He said, look, I came back after my sophomore season. He said, I was a little arrogant. I was like, hey, I'm coming back to go to the league. I got all these goals. I'm jumping in the draft. And he had off-season surgery. Blake came back. He was, he felt a certain kind of way about that. He admitted that. And the season wasn't going like he wanted to go. He admitted that. And it bothered him. It was in his head. And it took him a while to get out of his own head. And he said it was about staying humble, staying grounded in his faith, and staying the course. And he said once he started doing those things and on the field, stopped trying to do too much, he said, okay, now I started to do what I can do. And I look at the championship game. He said, making those plays, you look at that first touchdown run, it was a perfect example where he didn't try to do too much and it turned into a touchdown, right? And so he said, I'm not going to try to do too much. He said, I made all those expectations for myself. I'm going to jump in the draft. I'm going to go first round. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do just what I did last year. Stay grounded in my faith. Stay the course, right? Stay about my teammates, stay about the team, and the rest will come. So that's why I keep saying these guys are going to keep doing what they've been doing.
And you talk about not changing too much. The fact that Michigan brings a fullback to Big Ten Media Days, and Max Bredesen, he's a fullback / tight end, but really the last couple of years he's been a fullback.
Yeah.
Right? And you talk about someone who embodies that smash mindset, who embodies really the heart of the program, someone who comes here as a walk-on, obviously has family ties to the University of Michigan, but who then is contributing in some of the biggest games of the year. Talking about being the lead blocker for Blake Corum's first touchdown against Ohio State. He's on the field for the big plays in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And his excitement level at setting blocks, being violent and physical at the point of attack, and his excitement at what this offensive line is going to look like this year. That's obviously a big question mark, right? Michigan sent 5 guys, all 5 starters plus a 6th, to the NFL Combine, onto the NFL Draft. Max Bredesen's out here talking about Gio El-Hadi, talking about Josh Preeb, the transfer from Northwestern. Certainly, we'll see what that's like on August 31st, but it sounds like there's a lot of excitement about what this offensive line could look like this fall.
Yeah. Max, we talked about him a lot last year. I thought Max he was outstanding. I think Michigan people have an appreciation for him, and by bringing him to Big Ten Media Day, I think it sort of announces to the non-Michigan folks, like, this is a dude. Yeah. This is a guy.
He's a dude.
Like, he is an impact player. And so very astute of you to point out that Blake Corum's touchdown after the Zach Zinner injury, that's Max Bredesen on an insert that springs the play. Blake Corum's touchdown in overtime, that's Max Bredesen on a kick out on the power that helped spring the touchdown. So it's like, hey man, this dude is making meaningful plays in big moments that you don't necessarily see as a fan, but his teammates see it, his coaches see it. And so the question for him is, like, he's going to keep doing those things. You might see him do it even more. Like I was asking him, do we see even more Max Bredesen on the field this year? Do we see more 12 personnel this year? And then do we see more Max Bredesen in other ways? Do they let Max Bredesen run the football more? Do they let Max Bredesen catch the football some, right? I mean, he wants to get some of the flashy stuff too, but even if he doesn't get any of that, a guy who is a star in that role, and then a guy who they're going to rely upon to do some more of the leadership things, because Max, Colston, obviously Donovan, these are guys who have played a lot of football in meaningful moments. So those other guys who played some football, but not as extensively as those guys, they're going to be leaning on Max, on Donovan, on Colston in those moments. So they got to step up, and they're doing that.
Yeah, speaking of Colston, one of the most direct comparisons we've gotten from a Michigan coach in a while is Sherrone Moore saying, Colston Loveland, you ever heard of Travis Kelce? That's him right there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we've heard a lot about Colston. We've seen a lot about Colston. Heard some good things about Marlon Klein today, too, from Sherrone Moore. Mm-hmm. And I think there's just a lot of intrigue about what the offense is going to look like, because you have guys like Max Bredesen who can do a lot of things. You have Kalel Mullings, someone who Sherrone Moore said to look out for, who we saw him as a lead blocker last year. We saw him catching a sideline pass in the Rose Bowl. We saw him as an explosive ball carrier. You add in a Samaj Morgan, a Tyler Morris, a C.J. Charleston, a quick cat, as Sherrone Moore called him. There's a lot of unknowns, but a lot of excitement and a lot of potential there too.
Yeah, he lit up when he talked about. I mean, coaches in settings like this, everyone looks good.
Everyone's
right?
great. Yeah,
everyone looks good. This is that. But you could see there was a spark when he mentioned Khalil, and you get it. Like, you could see the flashes. You heard Donovan at one point. He said at one point, I was the number 3 back.
Yeah.
Right? You remember that? Because, Khalil really stepped up. Mm-hmm. You look at how he's evolved, his feet, his vision, mean with his jump cut. Like, he can feel how holes are going to open backside now. You can see his evolution as a runner. And so this is not the Donovan show. And I thought that was something else that came out in Donovan's conversation. The question was, can you be a 25 carry back? Right? And he was like, well, I'm 215. I want to be 212. I can carry it 25 times. I think he was trying to say 25 touches. I can catch it some. But really, I want the other backs to get some shine too. And that it's not just because he's a good teammate. It's like we got some talent, and obviously Khalil is a guy who can really hurt teams. Like he is a tough physical runner, but he is also a guy that can make guys miss, and that's a little known fact about Khalil Mullings that I think people are going to see more of this season.
Yeah, you talk about a guy who's really transformed his career coming over from linebacker, and the steps he's taken. Another guy who's taken a lot of steps is Makari Page, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another West Bloomfield kid, like Donovan, came in, played early, had to play early, and this year he's going to play a lot because we know Rod Moore's hurt. We know Keon Sadd's off to other opportunities. So Makari Page is a guy who's going to be a backbone to this defense. What do you hear from him? What do you think his season looks like this year?
You just said something. What do you hear from him? You hear him.
That's true.
He is
usually a very soft-spoken individual.
And that's big. That's huge for Makari. A guy who you always felt more than you. I remember his first year playing a couple years ago. He came up, I think it was against UConn, and blasted a guard on a play. That showed you something. He couldn't have been more than 185 pounds at a time. So you learn something about a dude, about what kind of guy he is. At 185 pounds, he's going to square up and hit a guard. So it's never been about how tough he is. He's always been a tough guy, but how loud can he be? How much of a leader can he be on a defense? He really didn't have to be with the guys that were back there before. Now he has to be, and it really sounds like you talk to the guys on the team, it sounds like he's stepping up in that role. And so that's what you like to hear. When you got Will Johnson on one side, really kind of rising in that moment, to have a guy in the middle of the defense that you can really rely upon in the same way to kind of guide around maybe some new pieces to the puzzle. Zeke Berry, he's been in the program, but he's new in that role. And then these other safeties that have come in, whether it's Jaden Mangum or Wes Walker, I mean, they played a lot of football, but they're new in this role. So you might be in a situation where, hey, you got to help these guys out. Feels like he's ready to do that. Of course, you got Quentin Johnson back there who can do the same thing, but they're going to be relying on Makari a lot. Sounds like he's up to the task.
Yeah, a guy, especially after what you lose from a guy like Mikey Sanderson last year, is obviously there's the on-field contributions, but there's a bit of a void there from a leadership standpoint. Mikey was so big as a mentor for so many of the transfers, whether they were in the secondary or not.
Yeah.
And whether it's Donovan, whether it's Makari, whether it's Mac, you need those guys stepping up because, as Sharon Moore has emphasized time and again, this is a player-led program. And for it to be a successful player-led program, you need players to take charge.
Yeah, I kind of see Will maybe kind of sliding into that, the way that Mikey was sort of the ever-present leader. I see Will kind of stepping up in that way, but he can't do it alone. Like, I don't think anyone fills that void by themselves. And so, yeah, Will is going to do a lot, but you need a guy like Makari to step up and do some of that too, and I think he will.
Yeah. Well, very exciting day at Big Ten Media Day. It always kind of marks the end of summer and the transition back into football season. Michigan starts its fall camp at the end of this month on July 31st. Obviously, first game of the season. Fresno State, August 31st. It's the national championship defense is coming up soon. Any last thoughts from Sharon from a new day with 6 teams here today, 18 teams in the Big Ten?
So I think the most interesting thing about Michigan, not surprisingly, is the quarterback battle.
Yeah.
They're very non-committal, which you expect them to be. I think if we are being, from the outside looking in, I think Alex Orji is leading this race heading into fall camp. All right. Why do I think that? Because I think he has a physical characteristic that is difference-making. Like, he is a difference-making athlete. That does not mean he's a difference-making player, right? So can he be enough of a difference-making player in camp? And so that means can he be consistent enough throwing the football? There's going to be more pressure. The season is upon you. Jack Tuttle is now present. He wasn't there in the fall. And Jack Tuttle has played a lot of football. He's going to have a calm and a moxie about him. His challenge is you got to stay healthy. right? I mean, I think this is his 7th year.
It is his 7th year.
I think this is his 7th year. And the injury bug has been what has derailed him. I mean, he's had Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
That doesn't help.
Yeah.
But it's been the injury bug for him. And then one of the best stories in Michigan sports history is Davis Warren coming back from leukemia. I thought Davis made tremendous strides.
Yeah.
If you watch Davis in his career at Michigan, you've seen him shine in spring games before. You've heard them talk about his arm talent. You know, he could throw it like JJ. Now, could he put it together, run around, and do all the? No, obviously he couldn't. And so, to see him in the spring game be able to throw with some simulated pressure in his face, that was a step. Can he throw with real pressure in his face? That's going to be, the test as they get in the fall camp and they get closer to game. So I do think it's a battle. The pressure is going to be a part of it, the pressure competition, the real pressure, the better pressure that they're going to see from the defense as they get closer to games. Who will be the guy? If I were a betting man, I would say Alex Orji, but they were clear not to anoint him, so I won't either. We'll have to wait to see. It's going to be an intriguing fall camp.
Same here. I thought we were going to make it through the whole show without talking about the quarterback battle. We were so close, man. We were so close.
Hey, man, people were going to say, they made it a point to say it is a competition. I do think I don't think they've determined it's Alex Orji, but I think he's the leading candidate heading into fall camp.
Well, they've got those practices coming up very soon, and we, of course, over at the Michigan Insider will have everything from press conferences, from intel from practices, conversations with players, coaches, and a big recruiting weekend coming up, and a lot more to come over at the Michigan Insider. For myself, Alejandro Zuniga, that's Sam Webb. Stay tuned with us over at michigan.247sports.com. Peace.